It's all about value, right? It's great to look at rankings. When you combine rankings and average draft position, that's going to help us obviously find the best values and the worst values in fantasy drafts. Today, we're going to look at Fantasy Pros PPR ADP, which is a little, I don't know what the right term is. It's unusual. I'll explain why in a moment. And we're going to take a look at Dan's most overvalued and undervalued players, and Jamie will critique. So Fantasy Pros ADP, if you look at half PPR, it looks kind of like what you might expect from a draft. You look at PPR, though, the running backs just plummet. So, for example, there are 26 wide receivers, 29, 20, 30. Oh, my God. No, there's 20. Okay, 27. There we go. I'm doing this on the fly. 27 wide receivers off the board before the 10th running back. So that's Travis Etienne, who's going 42nd overall. We expect Travis Etienne to be a second-round pick and not 27 wide receivers to come off the board before Travis Etienne. But what we're going to do is kind of, instead of looking at overall ADP, we're just going to look at relative to other players at the same position, and that will work for us. Hello, Dan. Hello, Jamie. Good job, Dan. Good job. Big week for you. We get your most wanted, we get your overvalued and undervalued, and we get you on national TV yesterday. Did you have fun?
I had a great time there. It was very exciting. I made one gaffe that I think, brought some laughs, though. So that was good. And same time, debuted my new setup back here. I'm off the toilet, and that's being retired for now.
I thought you just moved the toilet to a different room.
No, this is not a toilet anymore. This is a good regular setup. But I could use a little bit of work even here. I need to work on the lighting. I'm not a big fan yet of the lighting. So there's some tweaks that still need to happen. But, it's a big week, like you said.
By the way, we gave you a hard time for your gaffe. We didn't give Adam enough of a hard time for his gaffe, where we came back from a break and Adam was just staring at the camera. And then finally said, "Oh, we're back."
I didn't know when to talk. We're learning new things as we
also on the next segment. We had we were getting counted down to when we were back live on air. It was 30, 20, and when it was 15, Adam was like, "Wait a second, when do I talk?"
Anyway, it was a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it. Dan, give me one overvalued player and make it Travis Etienne so we can argue about it.
Yeah, I'm starting with Travis Etienne. Obviously, we're talking about relative to position. I discussed this a little bit in the past, but really it was a tale of two seasons for Travis Etienne. And it depends which one you want to buy into, because for the first 8 weeks of the season, he was the 4th overall running back and one of the best running backs in fantasy. After that, his touches went down by over 6 per game. The touchdowns were few and far in between. The passing game work was still there, but the production was not. And he had just 3 finishes inside the top, I believe, as an RB1, I believe, over the last, it was over the last 9 games. In 5 of his last 9 games, he had just 4 touchdown scored, and he finished outside the RB2 range in 5 of his last 9 games. So he wasn't even an RB2 for over half of his final 9 games of the season. I'm not going to fully buy into the talk of Tank Bigsby having a really good OTAs, taking that step forward, but I do believe what Doug Peterson hinted at, which is, there was a mental hurdle for Bigsby. That happens a lot with rookie running backs. They have to understand the system. They have to be, you have to have the quarterback has to be able to have trust in that running back to have him on the field in key spots, because specifically passing down situations and pass protection. If that happens, I'm even more scared. And I also think this offense wants to be pass heavy in its nature. Adam and Jamie, that's what Doug Peterson's always been. And if Trevor Lawrence can take that step and do a little better with this new receiver core, that could happen as well. So I just have a lot of reservations about Travis Etienne going off the board relative to where he's going at the running back position.
Wait, you think he's going to have less of a role in the passing game without Calvin Ridley?
No, what I'm saying is I think that the passing game will be a bigger part of their offense overall, and they'll be less of a run-first team. And that's really what it was for the first half. A lot of that, the Jaguars' offense was running through Travis Etienne. That just didn't happen as much in the second half. Like I said, his touches per game dropped by over 6 per game in the second half of the season.
Yeah, they were worse. They went 3-6 in those 9 games, and he was the number 23 running back per game in those 9 games. So he was bad. No question about it. Jamie, he's going as RB10, Travis Etienne. So that's after. There seems to be sort of like a consensus top 8, I'd say, not in some order. It's kind of like wide receiver. McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Bijan, Gibbs, Taylor, Barkley, maybe it's top. Yeah, then Etienne. So I'm sorry. Then Kyron Williams. Etienne is actually RB7 in this Fantasy Pros ADP, so he could be overvalued as well. That's 7 at Kyron Williams. Then I feel like Etienne might come in at 8. He's 10 here behind Etienne, behind Kyron, behind Derrick Henry as well. What do you think about Etienne as RB10, Jamie?
Definitely taking Etienne over Etienne. Definitely taking him over Henry. I think that this Jaguars offensive line will be better, so I think that will help him in a big way. I don't really buy the Tank Bigsby talk. I think there will be another player there, so it could be Bigsby or Diontae Johnson or both, kind of like what we saw last year. Look, they want to make sure that he's, I think, 100% and playing at his best toward the end of the season, kind of like how he was at the beginning of the season. I think he's going to be a big part of the passing game, which is I think a big factor here, because losing the 2 pieces that they lost and replacing them with what they did, it's going to take time for Brian Thomas. It's going to take time for Gabe Davis to sort of prove that he can be a legitimate threat. I'm obviously a big fan of Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, and I think those guys will be fine. I think we'll see a better Trevor Lawrence, but Etienne fits the profile, I think, of what we look for. He's going to get probably 200, 250 carries. He's going to get in the neighborhood of 50 catches, so 300 total touches. That's hard to overlook for what this landscape is of the running back position. And I think he's still in his prime. I like the fact, we talk about investment in teams. They picked up his 5th-year option, which they didn't have to do as a first-round pick running back. That's an easy position to move off of, and they decided that they're going to commit to him. And so improved offensive line. I hope improved play calling, because that was a big part of this also last year. Was who was the play caller? Was it Press Taylor? Was it Doug Peterson? I would love to get an answer on that, and I don't think we still have one even going into this year. But I do think that we'll see Etienne continue to dominate touches in his backfield while still losing some work, which again he did last year too. So I'm not necessarily worried about him coming off the field for significant stretches. I just think hopefully a fresher Etienne toward the end of the season will be a better one as the season comes to a close.
Okay, so Jamie's good with it. Jamie has him as RB8. Keith has Etienne as RB6 in full PPR, and Dan is probably going to avoid Travis Etienne in the second round. I will say that I kind of feel the same way about running back as I do as wide receiver. It get to the middle of the second round, I don't necessarily love the running backs. If Etienne falls to me and I can get him as RB8 in the middle of the second round, I mean, it happened to me in a draft. I think I went like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Travis Etienne, or something like that, and I was thrilled. So
when you say fall to you, where are you taking him?
I take him as early. It depends how the running backs are going. I mean, I take Marvin Harrison ahead of him, but I would take Etienne ahead of every wide receiver that we talked about, Jamie, yesterday or 2 days ago, or yesterday, I think. So that would be 9. I'd take 9 wide receivers ahead of him. I'd take 7 running backs ahead of him. So I guess that makes him the number 17 overall player for me.
So you have him basically where I have him.
Yeah. Okay. One undervalued player, Dan, based on Fantasy Pros ADP.
Yeah, I think Alvin Kamara comes in for me, top of the list for undervalued. Look, I understand the concerns with Alvin Kamara given the age factor, but if you just look at the holistic viewpoint of what he was able to produce last year in that offense with Derek Carr, who returns to the offense, a big check down type of quarterback, and just basically somebody who will use him as an outlet in the passing game. It's kind of curious to me why his ADP is so low throughout this draft season. I understand Kendry Miller, good, talented running back who they drafted, but Calvin Kamara himself will also benefit from the addition of Clint Kubiak as the offensive coordinator, because that zone blocking scheme that he's going to put in, which, by the way, did bring out the best of Dalvin Cook at a point in Dalvin Cook's career where we may not know if he still had what he had, like classic, prime Dalvin Cook, because we saw the last year without him, Dalvin Cook was not the same. And if he can do the same for Alvin Kamara, bring out the best of Alvin Kamara as a runner, there's actually more meat on the bone for Kamara to be an even better fantasy producer, because he wasn't all that productive as a runner last year. He brought a lot of his production via the passing game and just such heavy target volume, which I'm not so sure is going to come all the way down. I mean, they got rid of Michael Thomas. Obviously, Chris Olave's back, but the rest of that offense could still funnel in a lot of ways through Kamara. And if there's an improvement from him in the running game with Kubiak, like I said, this could be a big season for him again. And like we talked about yesterday, I think we saw that we did this on trivia. He was the 3rd or 4th most fantasy points in PPR, Alvin Kamara, and yet he's being drafted outside the top 15 at running back this year. Yeah. So I just feel like it's easy value there.
Yeah, he was 4th best per game in full PPR, 8th in half PPR, 16th in non-PPR. So it's, format is important here.
Yep.
And Jamie, why do you think Alvin Kamara is not being treated as a guy who finished in half and full PPR at top 8 per game, and obviously in full PPR 4th per game last year?
Age. I mean, at some point there's going to be a fall off here, and he's at that point in his career where you have to worry about it. Now, what he does, and I actually hope he gets a little bit of a break carrying the ball, because I think the best asset that he brings to fantasy managers in PPR is his ability to catch the ball, which should still be a big part of this offense. Because like Dan said, the receiving core is, unproven. With Rashid Shaheed as the number 2 guy, A.T. Perry, Bub Means, they have a lot of guys that need to step up and prove themselves behind even Chris Olave, who himself has not shown to be that elite alpha type of number 1 receiver that we're waiting for him to become, which I think could happen this year in his 3rd season in the NFL. But Taysom Hill still being there is a factor because of what he'll do at the goal line. You mentioned Kendre Miller. They still have Jamal Williams. So it seems like there's a lot of guys that they're going to try and get the ball in some capacity throughout the course of every game. We didn't really see it from Miller last year, but I think that's the expectation is in year 2, he's going to do a little bit more, and how much more could impact, where Kamara finishes as the season goes on. But I think as a pass catcher, his role should be fine. It's just a matter of, will he get to, 8+ touchdowns? And I think that's a hard thing for him to get to in this offense, unless he does break off some big runs. But as you've noted time and time again, Adam, the big plays as a runner have completely disappeared from his game, which is a little surprising and alarming. But I think that comes with age and part of this offense and how they operate.
I'm doing this search right now. So this data search over the last 3 years, Alvin Kamara does not have a run longer than 30 yards. In those 3 seasons, there have been 63 running backs with 200 or more carries. He ranks 48th in explosive run rate per carry. Let's see where I bet he's even worse than that per carry. 54th out of 63 per carry. The guys that are worse than Kamara are Zeke, Josh Kelly, Madison, Jamal Williams, Cam Akers, Kareem Hunt, Damian Pierce, Rashad White, and Mark Ingram. So he has, and I guess that's honestly almost an argument in his favor. You talk about the drop-off. We have seen the drop-off. He has been a below average to almost borderline bad running back for 3 straight years. And in those 3 years in full PPR, where has he finished? 6th per game, 13th per game, and 4th per game. In half PPR, 5th, 14th, and 8th per game. Non-PPR, 6th, 19th, and 16th per game. So he can be, as long as he's getting almost all the work, he can be what he's been.
And to be clear, I'm not arguing him as a breakout, just as an undervalued player at cost. It's almost like the case for him being undervalued was almost made just there, in my opinion, by you when you mentioned another player, Rashad White, who has similarly bad rushing metrics. And yet I feel like this is almost an arbitrage play on Rashad White. I don't personally see too much different between these two. Maybe Rashad White will fall his way into the end zone a little bit more often. Maybe that I'm not even sure about.
I think that's a big one there because as Jamie mentioned, Taysom Hill, I think I said Taysom has more rushing touchdowns over those 3 years than Kamara does.
Yeah, and that's the case for sure. But is it worth that big of a drop off and where you're going to be able to get Rashad White versus where you're getting Kamara? That I'm not sold on.
No. And Jamie, I've been thinking about this a lot for whatever reason. Like my mind drifts to this. I don't like drafting, bad running backs early or guys that might be bad. And I think you have to look at Kamara and say he's 29. He hasn't been efficient. He's not explosive for 3 straight years. It's like everything I felt about Zeke, And you got to put him at least in that category. Maybe he's not good. I love what Dan says about the new system maybe boosting him. But the thing about Kamara, Jamie, is he unlike a guy like those 2 scrubs, Mike Davis, who was it? Mike Davis and Myles Gaskin that we always come back to. Kamara's a legacy, right? He's arguably the face of the franchise. He's going to have a harder time losing his job, in my opinion. And, I think he has to be
compared to Mike Davis and Myles Gaskin. Yes,
and even compared to Rashad White.
Well, of course. I mean,
right.
It's the same reason why the Cowboys held on to Ezekiel Elliott and let him have the job that he did when Tony Pollard was clearly better. And so you could see a similar situation happening with Kendre Miller. Yes, their offense doesn't have a face. Derek Carr is not the guy I think that they are trying to market as, hey, come watch him. If Alvin Kamara is as electric as he can be, that's the player I think that people will want to see touch the ball, which is why they throw it to him as much as they do. Not that the marketing and the gameplay matches up or should ever. But in any event, yes, they're are a team without a face of an offense. And, I hope Chris Olave becomes that guy because he's capable of it, at least in my opinion, of being, that type of wide receiver. But look, I saw somebody comment in the chat. It's already moved, but we don't care how we get our PPR points as long as we get them, right?
Yeah.
It's the stupidity of PPR when he had the one game first came back, right? When he had, what was it, 13 catches, something like that?
Yep, 13 for 33 yards.
Right. So like this is the argument PPR versus half or versus none, why people hate PPR in some cases because of silly games like this. But that's what makes him such an asset, is that they don't have the receiving core to support, I think, the passing game that they're hoping to eventually have. And that's why he's so valuable. So and Dan makes a great point, comparing Rachaad White to Alvin Kamara, because if you do expect Kamara to hold up at 29 years old, then you probably should not be taking Rachaad White in round 2. And you should just be waiting for Alvin Kamara, which is probably going to be my guess, earliest end of round 3, round 4 ADP for, how most drafts will look in PPR this year, because the production should be somewhat similar. The touchdowns should favor Rachaad White, but the receptions are probably going to favor Kamara slightly. I do think Rachaad White's role should still be pretty good in that regard. But in any event, if these are the type of players that you gravitate toward, then you might want to just wait out for Kamara as opposed to reaching for White.
Okay, let's cut it off there. We got to take a break. We also have CBS Sports HQ for you to be watching. NBA Finals start tomorrow. NHL Stanley Cup Finals start on Saturday. There's golf. There's so much soccer going on right now. Obviously, baseball in full swing. And it's always football season. Find out what's going on in mini camps, OTAs, all that stuff. So check out CBS Sports HQ. And we're going to take a break and come back and give you a lot of news and notes and more of Dan's undervalued and overvalued players.
Have you heard of semaglutides? Ozempic, Mounjaro?
Hartman, this could be dangerous. Let's do it.
South Park, The End of Obesity. New exclusive event. Now streaming. Exclusively on Paramount Plus.
I love it. We get a South Park promo there, and I can see backstage when we're off camera, Dan and Schaefer just like cracking up. As soon as I hear I think that was Trey Parker, right? The Trey Parker voice, I just cracks me up. Amazing show. News and notes.
Such a better show than Family Guy.
That definitely better than Family Guy. Not in my opinion better than The Simpsons, but
it's better than The Simpsons. Yeah,
you've seen like 4 Simpsons episodes.
What'd you say?
You've seen about 4 Simpsons.
I've seen enough Simpsons.
It's too smart for you. Christian McCaffrey signed a 2-year contract extension. This is for years 2026 and 2027.
Yeah,
worth $18 million a year. He's also getting an additional $8 million for this year and next year. So that's 4 years. He's going to be 28 years old on Friday. Happy birthday, Christian McCaffrey. We don't really have to talk about this, but over the last 5 seasons, Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook are the only other running backs to average 23.8 or more PPR fantasy points, which he has done now 4 times, Christian McCaffrey. So he's just the best. We got a lot of OTA or mini camp notes here. Patriots offensive coordinator, he praised Drake May, but also said that Jacoby Brissett has had an exceptional spring and is still the starter. So Jacoby Brissett still the starter right now for the Patriots. If you have Treylon Burks on your dynasty team, not a great day yesterday. He's basically that has to earn his active roster spot on special teams, which is a big deal now with these new rules.
Yeah.
But you can't be feeling great about Treylon Burks.
I don't understand why a team just doesn't trade for him to see what they can get out of him.
Yeah. What else we got? Adonai Mitchell, Colts rookie. He seems to be having a good camp. We're going to keep an eye on that. We don't need a lot of target competition for Michael Pittman. Carolina rookie wide receiver Xavier Legette. He has a hamstring injury. Mike McCarthy, there is this story going around, Mike McCarthy saying that Dallas will use 2 or 3 running backs, whatever it takes. I think he was more talking like getting through the season, not necessarily on a week-to-week basis, but we'll just call that a big question mark in that backfield. And ADP is not really showing, a big preference towards Zeke, by the way. It's like Zeke and Dowdle, I think, pretty close and pretty late. Minnesota is moving N'Keal Harry, former first-round pick of the Patriots at wide receiver. The Vikings are moving N'Keal Harry to tight end, Jamie. Is there any any value there in any leagues where you'd pick up N'Keal Harry if he's tight end eligible?
I mean, I wonder just how much of this is a TJ Hawkinson not ready to go story, more so than a N'Keal Harry story, trying to get maybe a better receiving threat there. They did add Robert Tonyan this offseason between Josh Oliver and Johnny Munt. Obviously not a lot of explosiveness there from what they're going to be missing if Hawkinson's out, but it's probably more of I should avoid TJ Hawkinson if they're looking for desperation plays at the tight end position because they may not expect him to be ready to go.
ESPN's Paul Gutierrez said that in the 3 OTA practices open to the media, Raiders quarterback Aiden O'Connell has looked more comfortable and more precise in passing, while Gardner Minshew has been more mobile. And we'll direct you to Aiden O'Connell's last 4 games: 34 points against the Chargers, 2 points at the Chiefs. He threw for 62 yards. That was a big Josh Jacobs day, as I recall, or Zamir White day, as I recall. They upset the Chiefs. Then 24 points at the Colts and 22 points against the Broncos. So he actually had 8 touchdowns and I don't think any interceptions in his last 4 games, Aiden O'Connell. And Devontae Adams had 2 massive games, 1 good game, 1 terrible game in that stretch. Minnesota head coach Kevin O'Connell said they never considered trading Justin Jefferson. He was adamant about that. CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Ayuk did not report to minicamp. Dave Richard right now is in Chicago. He was at Bears minicamp. He said that basically said they all look good. Keenan Allen played pretty much exclusively out of the slot. DJ Moore was the best receiver. DeAndre Swift started, but the other guys worked with the ones. And he said Gerald Everett was working with the ones a lot. So I think caught him by surprise a little bit. And Caleb looked very good, according to Dave, until they were doing 11 on 11, and the pass rush got there, and then you saw some speed bumps for Caleb Williams. A few pop culture things here. There's a movie apparently called Constantine with Keanu Reeves that got a lot of love in our chat. People thought it was his best movie. Never even heard of it.
Yeah, I never heard of it either.
Big debut in Major League Baseball last night.
Dominguez?
Adam Mazier.
Oh, I heard it. I saw Frank tweet this last night. Adam Mazier making his debut. What is it? Adam Mazier?
If there's a sh in there, it's a Mazier, Mazure. But
he's even better.
Starting pitcher Adam Mazier.
Adam Mazier.
Had a good
fast enough.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Because the M blends in. Adam Mazier.
Adam Mazier. I got to track this guy. Did you add him yet for your fantasy team where Jack is screwing you guys over and not giving you the win?
He's ridiculous. No, we didn't add him. Our team's too good. And I don't know. I watched, went back and I watched the season 4 finale of Stranger Things.
Okay, random.
It's just such an amazing show. I cannot wait for that show.
You just randomly watch the finale of it?
Well, I've seen the whole thing. I really want to rewatch the whole thing. But I was like, yeah.
Is a new season coming for that show? No.
I think next year.
Yeah, not anytime soon.
The kids are going to have like full beards. They're going to be balding by the time the season comes. It's the best show. And I've got that song running up that hill in my head. Like,
it's so good.
Yeah. Right.
I started rewatching The Sopranos. So good.
Such a good rewatch. Early Sopranos too is so good. Or like season 1, 2, when it with Olivia with his mom. Oh, so
yeah,
good.
I'm episode 9 of season 2.
Oh, nice. You're in like the sweet spot of that show. What are you nodding at, Adam? You don't like Sopranos?
No, I've never seen it, but I
what?
I know. I know.
You're talking about rewatching of the Stranger Things finale, but you can't even find time to watch Sopranos or The Wire.
Amy, how many of your kids have seen Stranger Things? When can you start watching it with your kids?
Oh, none.
Yeah, it's a pretty adult show, honestly.
I think like 12 years old.
Yeah, I mean, my oldest might, but no, he's just turned 12.
Okay, yeah, they get into that. I can't. I'm excited for that day. All
right,
here we go.
Scary show too. Like, I don't think you want your kids watching that.
But it's okay to be scared. I was watching scary stuff when I was a kid. If you have an older brother, you guys don't. I have an older brother and sister. I was watching horror movies when I was way younger than 12.
That explains
What's
a lot.
the first one you saw?
I have no idea. I probably like Nightmare on Elm Street or something, but I have no idea.
You know that your parents are not happy about that and waking up crying.
They don't care. Nobody cares about the third kid.
First one for me was Poltergeist. It scared the bleep out of me.
Oh, it's a scary movie. That's legit. Like,
I do remember watching that as a kid and being really scared.
Nightmare on Elm Street, it's kind of it's okay. Friday the 13th is terrible, but Poltergeist is good. Here we go. Dan's undervalued list. 25 minutes in, so I'm going to go 3 minutes per player, okay?
Okay.
You got to make your point. Let Jamie make his point. Kamara was your most undervalued. Diontae Johnson, he's wide receiver 43. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just love what I've read about Diontae Johnson this offseason. There was a clip that circulated the other day with Panthers' new offensive coordinator discussing with Diontae Johnson, look, we brought you over because I've seen you on tape win time after time after time again when you're lined up as the X receiver and they don't shade any safety cover to your side. And if they're going to do that again this year, we've added these guys around him, Xavier Legette, all the talent they've added around him. We're going to get you the football. And I think that's going to be the case. I think Diontae Johnson is going to lead this team in targets by a wide margin, and he's going to be a really productive player. And I don't have to pay that much to get him. So this is more of a PPR play for sure. But at that price, wide receiver 43, for a player who has proven to just earn targets and get open and create separation at all levels of the field consistently. And he's done it with really bad quarterback play. I'm not saying I'm sure that Bryce Young's going to elevate the quarterback play that he's had with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and players of that nature. But I am sure that they have brought him in for a reason to win those one-on-one matchups as the true X receiver in this offense. And I'm really excited about getting what I think is the number one target in offense this late in the draft.
I totally agree with most of that. The one thing that scares me is because you brought it up. There was a clip circulating last year from the Carolina Panthers about a player in a role that was brought in.
Mingo?
And no, it was Miles Sanders.
Sanders. I forgot about that. We're going to get you the ball.
Catching the ball at the level you were at was Deuce Staley and Frank Reich. I think it was definitely Frank Reich was involved in, and Sanders was terrible as a free agent addition. But the thing about Diontae Johnson, and you mentioned crappy quarterback play when he had decent quarterback play because it was the end of Ben Roethlisberger's tenure there. He was one of the best PPR receivers and one of the better fantasy receivers that we had. It was why I think we were still hopeful for the last couple of years that he could bounce back and play at that level. So will he dominate targets? That's the thing I have the question about. He should lead the team in targets, but I think Thielen will be one of those annoying factors that will sort of bring him down a little bit. And then whatever they get out of Legette or the other guys there, I don't like the fact that Legette is dealing with a hamstring injury now. That should help Diontae Johnson. But in terms of the other guys there, how much of that will be a detractor for him? Because I don't know how much, they've talked about wanting to be a little bit more of a run-heavy offense. Will that take away from it? But you said it best. The price tag is so easy to buy into Diontae Johnson. And so, he may not be 100-catch guy, but if things go right, he stays healthy, Bryce Young takes even a slight step forward, 80 catches is easy to see. Touchdowns will probably be a little bit difficult, but he could be a good number 3 PPR wide receiver. So he's a little underpriced, but can certainly outproduce his ADP by a lot.
I'm going to give you the guys going around the same range as Johnson. DeAndre Hopkins, Brian Thomas, Christian Watson.
Yeah, I don't see any of those three having the same path toward targets as Diontae Johnson.
But the other guys have more upside, though.
For sure.
All right, so who are you taking first, Jamie? Hopkins, Diontae, Brian Thomas, Christian Watson.
It really depends what I need. So if I'm looking for, in our pick by picks, it was half PPR. My first 2 receivers were Jalen Waddle and George Pickens. As a third receiver on that team, I'm looking more for receptions than I would be for more explosiveness.
Okay.
If I'm pretty locked into, I know I'm getting 100 catch receivers for sure, I probably would take a chance on Christian Watson over Diontae Johnson in that case. Just for the bigger play, bigger upside potential. So it just kind of depends on how the build is for me.
All right, Dan thinks Jaden Daniels and Brock Purdy are underrated. They're going similarly after pick 100. I think we talked about that earlier this week on Dan's most wanted list. So let's go to DeAndre Swift. He is RB22. He's going after Aaron Jones and Zamir White, just ahead of Najee Harris. This is DeAndre Swift. Make your case for DeAndre Swift as undervalued at RB22.
It starts with following the money for me. I mean, when you see a team go out and do what the Bears did right at the start of free agency, they made sure to get DeAndre Swift, one of the first deals of free agency. They gave him a good lucrative contract for a running back. It stands out to me. It says to me that they are looking for something in their offense at the running back position they felt like they didn't have with Herbert and Rashawn Johnson. And maybe that's that electricity, that ability to be in every down, be a threat on every down, essentially be able to be a receiver or runner on every down, which I'm not sure they felt they had with Rashawn Johnson, Deontay Foreman, or Khalil Herbert. And with that said, I'm banking on the Bears offense taking a big step this year, which is something I personally believe in. I'm a big fan of Caleb Williams. I think he's the best quarterback prospect I've personally ever studied, including Trevor Lawrence, who had, more of the prototypical skill set, but Caleb Williams' arm talent was just unmatched from what I've seen. And so if that offense takes the jump I expect them to take, and DeAndre Swift is the piece of the offense that they brought him in to be and paid him to be, we're looking at someone who's probably going to end up on the field a lot more often than we think, getting a lot more receptions than we think compared to the rest of the running back position, which is not an easy thing to do, and then finding his way into the end zone 6 to 8 times maybe, which is all you'll need with those receptions. And at that price, you're probably going to get a borderline RB1 just outside the top 12 in scoring, and you're getting him at what, RB22 you said? So I just think there's a good piece, a good chance for value here with Swift.
I would love to see them just get rid of one guy, mostly Will Herbert, because
feel better.
Feel a lot better. I mean, he would probably jump 5 or 6 spots in my rankings. Right now, he's like, in that range, 22, 23. But it's just a matter of how much will they use the other guys. And but I agree with you. I mean, he's a great buy at his cost right now. And, I don't think gets the credit he deserves for how he performed last year because he missed out on a lot of touchdowns because of the tush push, So had he scored, I think, Adam, we talked about this, 3 to 5 more touchdowns, we feel a little bit different about DeAndre Swift coming off that season where he can still be an electric pass catcher. They just didn't use him in that regard as much in Philadelphia. I think they will a little bit more in Chicago. He did it in Detroit for sure. And, he showed he could be a 20 carry guy. He stayed healthy the majority of the season, missed the final week of the season, but that's, sort of irrelevant based on how most teams operate when they're in playoff contention. So, but if Khalil Herbert stays there, will they use 3 guys, and it's a little bit of a conundrum right now because Herbert had some great games for them last year, missed some time with the ankle injury, but when he was, used as that double-digit carry guy, was productive. And I do think that Roshan will show a little bit more. So it kind of gives me a little bit of hesitation. So the guys that I struggle with Swift are guys that are in, similar situations from a competition standpoint. It's Jonathan Brooks. If you told me he was healthy, I'd take Brooks. No question about it. But we have the ACL consideration. And then James Conner, who I think is getting a little undervalued as well because of the presence of Trey Benson. I still think that Conner will be the lead running back there. But those are the 2 guys really that I debate from a touch standpoint, Swift versus Conner. Right now I lean Conner, but that's probably a switch that I'll make.
Okay. I think, he was 24th last year per game. And that was with 5 or 6 carries that got down to the 1 yard line and were followed by tush push touchdowns. Do you think DeAndre Swift is going to be better than he was last year?
I think he will be, mostly because of the receptions. I do think you're going to see a massive uptick there. I think Caleb Williams is somebody who can use the running back in the passing game, unlike Jalen Hurts did. So I do think he will.
So you say massive upgrade in the passing game. And I know you like Rome Odunze because we've talked about that.
Yeah, and now we're getting trickier. Right now, we need a big 4,500-yard type offense to make.
Right, but you also said on a previous show you didn't think 4,000 yards for Caleb Williams. So
yeah, no, I did. I said I did on that. My bold prediction was he's going to break the pass.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you said under that, but breaking the.
No. I think he'll do it. I'm very confident in him.
Rookie quarterbacks don't typically throw to running backs that much. CJ Stroud had one of the lowest running back target rates last year. Anthony Richardson may have been even lower, but he barely played. Just kind of a thing. And but he only had 39 catches last year in 16 games, so he could have an uptick there. By the way, according to both PFF and ESPN's run block win rate, the Chicago Bears had a top 6 offensive line last year run blocking. So I know people are going to go, oh, huge downgrade from Philadelphia to Chicago. Actually, the Bears offensive line appears to be a strength. Let's go to our next player. And that would be
Jerome Ford.
I'm going to go off board a little bit here.
Okay, go off board.
Ford's like the lowest ranked guy on this list.
Okay.
So you've got Mostert and Gus Edwards.
Yeah, it's weird. Obviously, no one's excited to draft either of these 2 this year. But I looked at the ADP on Fantasy Pros, and I was stunned to see that you essentially just free square plays. Let's start first with Raheem Mostert, who I understand they added Jalen Wright. I think a lot has been made of the addition of Jalen Wright in the draft, and too much has been made. When I watched him at Tennessee, there were some exciting moments, but you really have to take everything with a grain of salt because of the system that Josh Heupel runs at Tennessee. They have, if you guys have seen it, it's pretty incredible how they utilize the space on the field. And the wide receivers are really lined out a line, which means every single time it's a light box, 6 defenders in a box, sometimes 5 defenders in a box. And Jalen Wright looks really good, but I wonder if that space is going to be available for him at the NFL level. And if it's not, I wonder if he's going to be able to be effective right away at the NFL level. And I don't see it happening. So I think this is going to be a 2-man game with Raheem Mostert and Devin Etienne. And I don't see any reason why Mostert shouldn't do something similar to what he did last year. Sure, there will be touchdown regression, but at this cost, you're not asking for anywhere near what he did last year. So just feel like you're going to get a guy who can slot in as your RB2 every week with Raheem Mostert. He's going to score some weeks, maybe a flex, but at this price, that's all you're paying. And then Gus Edwards, brought in to fit this exact regime, has played with Greg Roman. And I look around that roster, and what am I really all that worried about? J.K. Dobbins, who has never been able to stay healthy at any point in his career and has had so many debilitating injuries. Sure, on paper, Dobbins looks more like a better fit than Edwards and a more exciting, explosive player, but I can't buy into him staying healthy. And then other players who they've brought in there to play running back, I'm not so sure will get on the field right away in year one. Like they brought in a rookie. I'm blanking on who it was. I think it was
Vidal.
Yeah, Vidal, who a lot of people are excited about in the community, but in the fantasy community, based on the fact he was drafted by the Chargers, but that's a rookie. I'm not so sure a rookie's getting on the field for a lot of snaps. He's going to have to be really good in pass pro. So I think Gus could end up playing a lot more snaps than we think in an offense that really blocks well and designs the run game well. And once again, we could be looking at another season where Gus Edwards is an RB2. And you don't have to pay for him as an RB2, just like with Mostert, you're paying RB4 prices. So I just think there's good chance for, value. And I like these guys specifically if I have a very wide receiver heavy build.
Okay. Gus Edwards and Mostert. Mostert is RB28, Jamie, and Edwards is RB35 in this Fantasy Pros PPR ranking.
I wonder with Mostert, and this, goes back to the ADP even, that Devon Achane's the number 7 running back coming off the board, and Mostert 28, which I think is fairly priced. I have him a little bit lower than that because I do think that there's going to be a bigger role for Achane and some role for Jalen Wright. And if the touchdowns, crater for Mostert, he had 18 to lead the NFL last year. Is he going to be as productive elsewhere? Plus, he's going to be 32 years old. So I'm just a little concerned that we don't get what we're hoping for here, which is the breakout for Achane and still Mostert being a safe RB2, which is, I think kind of what Dan's getting at, that you can still start him consistently. Now, you're not drafting him to be that way, which is fine. If you're drafting him to be a high-end flex with the hope that he becomes something more, or if he doesn't get you to that level of production, at least you're not investing in him as a starter. So I think that, again, the ADP is fine, but I just don't see these two working out the same way where they're both going to get what you're looking for, which is still good production from Mostert and Achane taking a step forward. So I can't really buy into both. For Edwards, I think it's spot on. He's not the type of guy that you typically want to invest in, but he's in the right offense that you want to invest in because, as Dan said, they're going to run the ball a lot. J.K. Dobbins, I was extremely excited about him last year. I got a half of production from him that I was looking for, and that was it. He's missed 43 games since coming into the NFL in 2020. That's just awful. So maybe this is the year he surprises us and stays healthy because it is a good landing spot, but hard to bank on. Now, Vidal is easy to draft, and this is, we talked about this with the Cincinnati backfield. It's such an easy investment to get Zach Moss and Chase Brown. It's even easier to get two of the Chargers guys if you want to, and I would lean toward getting both Edwards and Vidal, and you can get Edwards, like you said, RB36. Vidal's basically free. So if you want to get pieces of this backfield just to see how it all shakes out, I highly recommend doing it. So, not a bad call to get both those guys just on that team and see how it all unfolds.
All right, we got to take a break here. We're going to talk about one more player, and it's not going to be Jerome Ford on the undervalued list, and then we'll do some overvalued players. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
There's some new players in town, and they brought the plague.
You got my attention. You don't want that. Welcome to Kingston.
Mayor of Kingstown. New season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
I see Trey Benson on Dan's undervalued list. He's RB32. He's going right after guys like Raheem Mostert, Tony Pollard, and Devin Singletary. This is Trey Benson, Cardinals rookie. He's going before Tajay Spears and Brian Robinson. I don't remember which show we talked about, but Tajay Spears still is one of the best draft values for sure. But as far as Benson goes, he's going only 5 running back picks after James Conner. And I actually think Conner is the better value here, Dan, as RB27. Benson is one of the first, true. Well, I don't know how much you think he's going to play, but handcuffs, I would call him. Like, I don't think he's Tajay Spears in terms of role. And if everyone's healthy.
So I look at it very differently. I don't think they drafted him where they drafted him to be a handcuff at all. This is a player who 2 years ago broke the forced missed tackle record from Pro Football Focus, forced a missed tackle on almost a half of his carries. It was a previous record held by Travis Etienne and Javonte Williams, who I know we look at Javonte Williams a different way now, but back in college coming out of UNC, he was a freak who forced a lot of missed tackles. And that's an advanced metric that seems to carry over and predict success. He also ran a 4.39, and it's obvious on tape that he has that breakaway speed, that ability to kind of create forced missed tackles in space and manipulate angles. I find him to be one of the best talents. He was my RB1 in this class. So I don't think when you use that kind of early capital on a player like that, he's just going to be a handcuff. I think his role could be pretty similar to Tajay Spears in a much better offense that scores a lot more points. And in addition to that, he has a guy ahead of him in James Conner who has an injury history and has battled injuries at times pretty much every year of his career. So if there's a better chance for me, in my mind, to potentially see, a workhorse role, I think it's coming from Benson. I'm not so sure. I mean, I believe Tajay Spears can be a workhorse despite his diminutive size, but I'm not so sure the Titans do. But I do believe that. But I know Trey Benson can be, because he was that at Florida State, and he has the size for it. He's a much bigger back than Tajay Spears. So I think you're talking about incredible talent that they went up and got in the draft for an offense that could take a big leap forward. I think he's going to have a role early, and it could potentially be, a league-winning pick if James Conner does get injured again. And you're getting that really late in a draft. This is very late for probably what I would consider the most talented running back in class. You could argue Jonathan Brooks, and that's fine. I understand that. But it's one or the other of these two. So I just like the overall landscape of that. I'm getting really good value in my mind because I'm getting a potential league-winning pick.
Yeah, he didn't really go that early. I mean, it was a third-round pick. If you look at third-round picks,
third-round pick.
66th overall, yeah.
Yeah, but basically, back. That's one of the first picks of the third round.
Sure, it is a third round pick, and I don't know. Rookie Roshan Johnson was a third round pick last year. Who else? I think he might have been the only third round pick. Rashad White was a third round pick. He did nothing.
I mean, Jonathan Taylor went off the board at 45 overall.
Rashad White had
running backs don't get drafted high. I don't know.
All right. I mean, 66 is kind of high
for a running back for sure.
It is, yeah, but also it is round 3, and round 3 picks typically don't do much as rookies. But a lot of people obviously agree with you, Dan. They obviously agree with you. They're taking bad. I think they don't have a lot of faith in Conner. It's basically what I'm seeing here. Jamie, how many rounds should separate Conner and Benson?
I don't think very many, just because Conner's going to fall, which, like you said, makes him a great value pick, because if he stays healthy, he will be the best running back in Arizona. Benson, I think, is going to need an injury to Conner to be a starting caliber fantasy asset. But I do think he's one of the best insurance policies you can have, and certainly one of the better lottery tickets you have, because Dan said Conner gets hurt almost every year of his career. It's just a matter of, how much will these guys work in tandem together? And that's still a little bit of a concern, because they haven't shown, even in 2 different coaching staffs since Conner has been there, that they've wanted to give other guys work. Now, again, they haven't had a guy as talented as Trey Benson, so I think that comes into play. But look, Benson is going to be one of these guys that you take with a mid-round pick. Don't take him with the idea of him being a starter. Hope that he could become a starter because of the Conner track record. And then we'll see what happens if he runs away with the situation when Conner is banged up. So I don't mind them going close together, because I think people are excited about Benson and a little bit down on Conner. But I think that just makes Conner the better pick to get, because the further he falls, the better off it'll be for your fantasy team.
Time to look at Dan's overvalued players, and it was Travis Etienne. We talked about it at the top of the show. DJ Moore is wide receiver 19. He's going 25th overall, which really could definitely happen in your drafts. I mean, I think I saw it in the draft. The OnlyFans draft I did a few days ago.
What?
It was only our fans were doing it.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, DJ Moore is going ahead of Stephon Diggs. The guys, we're going to talk about one guy is the most overvalued player in the world next. But anyway, do you think DJ Moore is too high at wide receiver 19, Dan?
Yeah, just a little bit too high for me. I think part of what's made DJ Moore such a fantasy success has been lack of target competition around him. Didn't have much to work against him last year with Chicago. Same was the case in Carolina, and that led to a dominant in target share. I'm not so sure that's the case anymore. We talked about DeAndre Swift, who might be brought in and have a little bit of a role in passing game, but also Rome Odunze, one of the best wide receiver prospects I thought I've studied in the last 10 years. He would have been wide receiver 1 in 7 of the last 10 draft classes for me, as would all of those two big 3 receivers, Nabers and Marvin Harrison. So now you bring in a really, really good talent to compete with for targets, in addition to Keenan Allen, who still had like top 2, top 3 separation rate last year in the NFL. So just a lot of target competition he didn't used to have. Plus, still a rookie quarterback. I'm bullish on him, but bullish is when you believe
Yes, you're
right?
bullish.
I'm bullish on Caleb Williams, but still a rookie quarterback. And like you said, rookie quarterbacks have tended to not have that much success. And the Bears have never had a 4,000-yard pass.
Did I say that? I don't think I said that.
I said they don't throw to running backs.
No, I mean, rookie quarterbacks didn't have a lot of success. Things are changing.
A little bit. Just Stroud, really.
No, like I said yesterday or whenever you're on, Baker Mayfield set a touchdown record.
Yeah.
Well, who else?
Herbert set the touchdown. Herbert was the real one. Yeah.
No, Herbert broke it.
And Burrow was pretty good actually before he got hurt as a rookie.
Right.
And then Stroud.
Yeah, and he could do it. It's a lot of target competition there that he's never had in his entire career. So I just think you're paying the price for his pass production.
Okay, Malik Nabers is wide receiver 21. That is just wild. As a Malik Nabers guy,
yeah,
way too early.
It's too early for a multitude of reasons. Mostly the Giants passing game has been absolute abject disaster. They have made some additions on the offensive line to try to improve what was the dead last worst offensive line in football last year by every metric. But not crazy improvement. I mean, they brought in John Runyon, who they believe can help, and they're still banking on Evan Neal. So there's a chance that offensive line remains a disaster. It's not a guarantee. In addition to that, Daniel Jones, not a quarterback who throws the football very well at any point in his career, has had seasons of 11 touchdown passes, 10, 15 was his breakout season in 2022. So the touchdowns are going to be tough to come by for Malik Nabers in year 1. Now, I still think he can potentially give you what Jalen Waddle gave the Dolphins as a rookie, which is kind of that Mickey. And I'm going to credit Matt Harmon for this because he brought this up, and I really thought it was a great point. It's a lot of that kind of like Mickey Mouse style offense. Quick targets, layup throws, just get the ball out to him, and then he can do some damage, and he will. And that could be a high reception total, maybe a good amount of yards, a little over 1,000, but the touchdowns are going to hold him back. So at this price, you need him to score 8, 9, 10 touchdowns. And it's hard for me to see him get into that touchdown range.
I used to do a pretty decent Mickey Mouse voice when my kids were watching Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I don't think I have the guts to try it right now.
No, let's go.
Come on.
It was like,
that's decent. Now go with it. Commit.
Come on, Mouseketeers. Are you Mouse-ready? It's just
that's pretty good, actually.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? You earned praise for that one.
Jamie, I'm going to get your thoughts on Trey McBride, who Dan has on his overvalued list. Tight end 3, going 7 picks ahead of Mark Andrews as a round 4 pick, 44th overall. Is Trey McBride being overvalued, as Dan would say?
I like Andrews better, but I don't think he's overvalued in round 4. I think we're going to see, another, productive season from him. Dan brought this up. I think it was on our CBS Sports Network show yesterday that, the target crunch is something to be a little bit concerned about because Marvin Harrison Jr. is now there, and Zay Jones and Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch, those guys will command some level of targets. But I think from what we saw from McBride, second year breakout, he was on pace to lead tight ends in points per game from week 6 on when Zach Ertz was gone. It was, by percentage points, or by decimal points, but it was close. He's got the ability, I think, to be one of these elite tight end producers. And it's just a matter of, how much will Kyler Murray continue to lean on him. It is a very tight end friendly offense. The offense coordinator's name escaping me right now, but comes from Cleveland, who, under Kevin Stefanski, very tight end friendly offense. We saw that last year with how they used Ertz in the beginning of the season, and then certainly how they used McBride at the end of the season. And I think that will continue. And so I don't mind him as tight end 4. Again, for me, he's getting closer to Dalton Kincaid than he is to the other 3 because I think Mark Andrews getting overlooked a little bit, so he's one of the better values in the upper echelon of players. But I don't mind him in round 4, and I don't mind him being drafted in the elite level group of tight ends.
Okay, I'm going to help you out with the offensive coordinator's name, which I looked up. His last name It's 2 syllables. First syllable. Jamie, you bought one of these a few months ago, as I recall. Okay. It's furry. You love it.
Dog. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dog, right, is one name for it. Second syllable is like when you make a really funny joke, and somebody would say after like, so, okay, we have dog, haha, or we have pet zing.
Got it. Petsick. Yep.
Drew Petzing.
Yep.
Zing. Okay. Anywho, let's go to Keenan Allen. You also have on your list. Brian Thomas, wide receiver 44. I'm going to go to him. And wide receiver 44 for Brian Thomas. So this is just after Roma Dunze and Diontae Johnson, just before Christian Watson and Jackson Smith and Jigba, who are, I think, easy calls over Brian Thomas personally. What do you think about Brian Thomas at wide receiver 44? You say he's overvalued.
Look, I don't hate the idea of investing in Brian Thomas for the upside, and I'm always a big fan at this stage of the draft of buying into upside. But I think it's really important to note that he came from an offense, late breakout at LSU, and if you look at the route tree last year, he really just ran 2 routes at LSU, and that offense is I talk about Josh Heupel's offense at Tennessee and how it's tough to find carryover from that to the NFL game. It's somewhat tough to find it with Brian Kelly's offense, which I think could be interesting for Jaden Daniels in Washington, by the way. A lot of slot fades that just won't be available to him at the NFL level. The space is just not there, and that really worked in Brian Thomas's favor, that kind of space. And again, running 2 routes, if he has to take time to learn the route tree or perfect the route tree, will that time be spent on the field or will that time be spent on the practice field? They have a lot of options that could play ahead of him. They have multiple tight ends they could get on the field. They just spent a 2nd-round pick last year on Brenton Strange. I'm not certain they're going to never put him on the field this year after that kind of investment, especially with him having a year up in the system over Brian Thomas. So there's just options to get on the field. I'm scared that he just will be one of those guys that just doesn't play a lot early in the season. And, we're getting him at a spot where, like you said, there's guys like Diontae Johnson, Jackson Jigba, guys I know who will be on the field.
Jamie, would you take Christian Watson and JSN ahead of Brian Thomas?
Yes. I think, again, raw prospect, great opportunity. Second half of the season, I think he could be a lot of fun and very productive. But I think the same thing for those 2 guys. Watson, I said it a few times now that I think if he's healthy, gets this hamstring injury under control, he could be the best receiver for the Packers and has shown that, based on his high-end production. And for JSN, I think the offensive change in Seattle will benefit him. Plus, if there's an injury to any of the guys in front of him, he could be an absolute superstar. So I would take those 2 guys over Thomas, who is stepping into a great situation. Over 200 targets vacated without Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones there. But I think Christian Kirk and Ingram and what Etienne does in the passing game, plus Gabe Davis, is going to help negate a lot of those vacated targets and not necessarily allow Brian Thomas to flourish right away. So he's going to take some time, but could eventually become a good player. But I think those other 2 guys a little bit better.
So the thing about Thomas is that as I sit here today, I don't really feel like I want to draft him. We just talked about why, but yeah, the fact that he is a raw prospect and I think he's gonna be 3rd on his team in targets and whatever, probably not going to be great this year. But the Justin Jefferson just sticks in the back of my mind. Justin Jefferson was drafted similarly, in terms of what pick was used. Justin Jefferson, I think, was the 5th wide receiver taken, and Thomas was the 4th. They were both 1st-round picks. Jefferson came in. Look at his ADP that year. No expectations, really. I mean, he's a 1st-round pick, we should draft him. But nobody really expected much. But he was obviously a Stephon Diggs replacement. Diggs was traded. And Thomas is obviously a Calvin Ridley replacement. And I almost feel like I have to be more open-minded about Brian Thomas. This is separate from whether or not he's overvalued or undervalued. But, I see major downside. Not even worth rostering, basically. Quentin Johnston, not quite that bad, but JSN, just because he was a 1st-round pick doesn't mean anything. But I can't get over the fact that there are similarities. It reminds me of Jefferson, I guess, the college, the explosiveness, all that stuff. I don't want to eliminate the possibility that he is a huge surprise this year.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but look, we get, I think, a little bit enamored with, and understandably so, because these teams invest in them. But with these 1st-round wide receivers, Treylon Burks has been a bust. Jalen Reagor was a bust. it's not a foolproof situation that just because a guy goes in the first round that he's going to be a superstar. And so, look, the opportunity is there. Again, vacated targets, huge opportunity. Quarterback that hopefully will play better, but has been disappointing. But, again, if he's healthy, Trevor Lawrence can still produce great production from his receiving core. And there's a chance that Thomas is the best receiver on his team if he can pick things up right away. But I think everybody viewed him coming into the league as a prospect that still needs to grow a little bit after just having 1 year of exceptional production at college. Like you said, the college makes you feel like, okay, they've produced great wide receivers. They certainly have. LSU has been, wide receiver university for the last couple of years and how they've gotten guys into the league and playing at a high level. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a star right away. So where you're drafting him in the 40s, it's an easy investment. Taking him over some of those other guys, I don't necessarily think you have to, but again, he can be better than those guys. There's no doubt about it. So yes, you should be more open-minded to it. I think it's a more fascinating conversation almost from a dynasty perspective than it is from redraft, because you're sinking a first round pick into a guy that you're hoping to be the future wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 on your team. And the group that he's going with, there's no sure thing, I think, either. Where's the high end level for Ladd McConkey? I think people will say, okay, maybe he's Keenan Allen, but that's a big leap because Keenan Allen's been amazing. Xavier Worthy, speed guys haven't been great.
Because with the 7th pick of our dynasty draft, which I'm going to start soon, if it comes down to it, I will take Xavier Worthy over Brian Thomas.
Well, it's funny because I went through our draft last night because I was bored and I was looking at like what teams may do. You should have an opportunity to probably end up with JJ McCarthy or Drake May, which I think you need.
I don't want them. I don't
talking about Baked Burger.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. What pick
do you have? I don't know that I believe in McCarthy. And
you want it? I'll tell you. Let me see if I can predict it correctly.
7th pick.
I'll do it at the end of the show.
I think there is a chance that I get a Dunze or Nabers. There is a chance.
No shot at either of those two.
Why? I think Harrison's off the board. Okay, Harrison's off the board. 3.
No, here I looked at this. I'm telling you, I did it last night. I looked at everybody's roster and what they're going to do. First pick.
We're going to end
Mahomes, has Mahomes, Prescott, and Baker. Not taking a quarterback, so taking Marvin Harrison. Second pick has no quarterbacks.
Just so give me your projected top 6.
Harrison goes 1. Caleb goes 2. Nabers goes 3. Heath has no quarterbacks. He's taking Daniels, which is easy. 4. 5 is Odunze. So 3 and 5 are the same team. So ends up with Nabers and Odunze because they have quarterbacks, or maybe Jonathan Brooks. But that's where that goes. Bobby's All Stars probably goes Bowers, and then it's you, which I think.
So listen, if you get Bowers as 6, and you get Brooks or another quarterback instead of Nabers or Odunze, then there you go. That third receiver falls to 7.
But you going Brooks makes no sense.
I'm taking Xavier Worthy over Drake May or in Superflex.
Yeah, I need a third quarterback. I'm probably going quarterback at 9.
Okay, I'm going with Xavier Worthy over QB3, I think. We'll see. I'm open for business too.
I ultimately ended up trading last year during the draft Dalton Kincaid for a future first. That's this year's first. It ends up being the second to last pick. I'm not so sure I love that trade anymore by me. At the time, I was like, it's a great trade. This is a phenomenal trade by him getting a 1. But now I'm like, I don't know about that. I think I'd rather have Dalton Kincaid than whatever I'm going to get at the second to last pick.
Would you rather have Dalton Kincaid, Brian Thomas, or Xavier Worthy?
I think Dalton Kincaid. Yeah. So I don't think I did good on that.
I think Worthy has like just not year 1 necessarily, but just massive potential.
Yeah, but think about the players that they've had there.
I don't
think Worthy's like any of the players they've had in.
I don't disagree with you, but
and they're about to lose Kelsey. At some point, they're going to lose Kelsey.
He makes me nervous though. I mean, they failed on Mecole Hardman, they failed on Sky Moore, they failed on what's the third guy? I mean, Kadarius Toney, but they traded for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony's a whole different issue.
Brian Thomas caught 17 touchdowns last year, by the way. 12 of them were considered deep by True Media, mostly go routes and post routes. I just don't think he's ready this year to be him. Okay, we gotta go. Now that I dropped that super cool. Oh, we have a draft in 15
Magazine
minutes.
draft in
We have
15
our
minutes,
first
baby.
draft in 15 minutes.
Oh, real draft.
I have the first pick, right?
Yeah, I don't still. How did that random draft order get decided? I hate having the 12th pick, and I feel like it was rigged, honestly.
I'll give you the first pick.
Okay, done.
the
Jamie,
12th
make the
pick.
change. Make the change, please.
No, not all of them. I'll give you 1. You give me 12, and I also
13?
get your
Oh, so I'm
second. I get 13 and
we
We
swap.
we can't make trades. You can make trades for players, but the way the magazine has to be laid out in the magazine, the way the draft has to be laid out in the magazine, you can't be doing this.
Stop complicating things, Adam.
All right.
Trade draft spots.
Yeah, trade the draft spot.
I'll give you the first pick. I will make your picks in round 3 and 5.
And then I get your 3 and 5 or no?
No. You just get 1. You get McCaffrey.
No.
Terrible.
Get out of here.
Terrible.
Get out of here.
All right, everybody.
Last time Dan had the first pick, he ended up going McCaffrey, Kupp, Kelsey, Keenan Allen, and Marquise Brown. I think were his first 5 picks.
No, that wasn't true. And that was a long time ago. And I still don't believe that
And
happened.
then you blamed me for Marquise Brown, which I don't know what you're looking at.
That is 100% true. That is exactly what
No, there was a couple picks in between that you're missing, but don't worry
Nope,
about it.
they
It
were
was a long time ago. Things have changed.
I think those were your first 5 picks.
They were absolutely.
It was like old, decrepit.
We had like no ADP on the site at the time, and I was just
because
like
we have a lot of ADP now. as
picking
we're-
from the hip. It was one of those days I had something else going on. I was picking from
It's
the
always
hip.
an excuse.
Always. All right, we'll talk to you
Why don't we
later.
play the Dan story?
I'm gonna get the actual clip. We'll tell it another time. All right, see you later, everybody. Have a good one.
Have a good one.